Recently, the creators behind the game Days Gone pitched an idea for a sequel, which was sadly rejected by Sony. This was obviously pretty upsetting for fans of the game, and I can completely understand that. Now though, an article has been published on the 26th of June which states, virtually as fact, that Days Gone is not the worst Sony game and it should have been given a sequel. And furthermore, Ghost of Tsushima is actually Sony's worst game. Now I kind of have some thoughts on this, as you might imagine, but before that, I want to thank everyone for the support recently. I'm seeing the thumbs up, I'm seeing the views, I'm seeing all the nice comments, all that sort of thing, and of course, the subscription number keeps going up, so that's great. Welcome to the new subscribers. I hope you'll enjoy your time on this channel, and if you're not subscribed but you are watching this right now, maybe check out the rest of my stuff, and if you like what you see, consider subscribing today. Now then, what's all this about? Well, a friend of mine brought this article to my attention a few days ago, and of course anyone who watches me frequently will know I am very open to other people's views and opinions, and I always like to make that really clear in pretty much every video that I do. This article though, which was published on metro.co.uk, says that Ghost of Tsushima is Sony's worst game and that Days Gone is just factually better. What this is essentially an opinion piece written as a fact. To the writer's credit though, they do try to explain everything they're saying, although I do think there is one thing that really needs to be said here. He's not necessarily wrong, because it's his viewpoint, right? But creating an article like this is close to being what most people call rage bait. But again, I suppose to his credit, it has kind of worked, right? Here I am making a video about it. But I want you all to know that my goal with this is not to tear him down, it's not to call him any names, it's not to invalidate his opinions, but more so to give you all a real life example of two different people having two completely different views on the same thing, and it being completely normal, and therefore not an issue. And this is something that's common in my videos, it's a common background theme to a lot of things that I do. I simply want to tell you all how I personally feel about various news and what I think of different games when I review them. As an example, when I do a news video, I explain what the news factually is, and then I give my personal opinion on that news. When it's a review, I explain what the game is, what it's about, who made it, all that kind of stuff, and then I give you my personal opinion on things, you know, stuff I liked, stuff I didn't like. And I don't give ratings or scores at the end of my videos. I did in the beginning, but I don't anymore now, because to me, they are kind of useless in a way. The only way that reviews can be properly consistent is if one person reviewed everything. And even then, they would only be consistent within their own personal tastes. I try to give a recommendation based on various different types of players and people. And even then, you guessed it, it's my opinion, right? But with all that clear in our minds, let's talk about a few things from the article, and I'll sort of try to show you what I mean. The article in question will be linked in the video description if you want to read the whole thing for yourself. And I should just say that this is marked as a reader's feature on the metro.co.uk website, which I believe is where they have readers of their website give them articles to post. So it's sort of like, you know, someone from the public wrote this and sent it in and now they're featuring it. It's that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. It's not an actual journalist doing this as far as I can tell. So let's get into some of the little snippets, shall we? If you check the article out for yourself, the first thing you're likely to see is in bold. It says, a reader argues that if Sony is going to ditch any game, it should be Ghost of Tsushima, which they accuse of being bloated and repetitive. And straight off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and say, if that's the way they feel about it, that's the way they feel about it. You know, I'm not going to invalidate it and say, no, it's not bloated and repetitive, because if it is to them, it is. Do you see what I mean? It just is to them if that's how they feel about it, and I'm not going to take that away from them. It goes on to talk about how there's a lot of rumors at the moment that Ghost of Tsushima is going to get a PC or a PlayStation 5 update and an expansion and all this stuff, and as of the time of this recording, we know that there is in fact a director's cut version coming with an expansion and updated visuals and all that for the PlayStation 5. So at the time this was written, no one knew about that. But their point is that with all the attention that Ghost of Tsushima is getting, they kind of believe that Days Gone should be the one to receive this. And again, if they prefer Days Gone, I can see why they would feel that way. And in that section of the article, it goes on to say, quote, I know it's Days Gone that usually is regarded as the worst of the modern exclusives, but for me, it's Ghost of Tsushima. And see, that there is a perfectly fine explanation. You know, they've acknowledged that a lot of people think Days Gone is the worst modern day Sony exclusive, and then they've said, but for me, it's Ghost of Tsushima. So I 100% respect the way that piece piece was written. And then, quite rightly, goes on to say that he doesn't consider either game to be terrible, and that most of the problems that they have are shared across both games, which again is an opinion, but it's a very fair way of putting it, which I respect. And if you're wondering why I'm giving him all of these sort of kudos here, it's because, like I said at the beginning, I'm not trying to tear this person down. I'm just trying to show you how two different people have very different opinions on the same thing, and how it's perfectly fine. So the next thing that they go on to say is that both games suffer from over-familiarity and uninteresting characters. They then go on to say, quote, "In my opinion though, Days Gone does it slightly better, in that it at least has an original gimmick in the zombie hordes, and it's not a straight copy of another game like Ghost of Tsushima is." Now, with the way he said that, I feel like it was one of those sort of compliment sandwich things where he was saying that they both have similar problems, but for me this one does it slightly better, and then he goes to say Ghost of Tsushima is a copy of another game, which basically all games are copies of other games. Not completely, and obviously there's very, very subtle differences and sometimes very big differences within the same type. So take Doom and Halo for example, they're both first-person shooters. They both have you walking around a level, jumping and whatever, shooting things. They're not the same game though, and I think here is where he slips up, because he goes on straight away to say, quote, "As everyone realized very early on, Ghost of Tsushima is basically Assassin's Creed in all but name." And he's just basically said that as a fact, you know, as everyone realized. I didn't. You can't just state things like that. And I guess I'm not asking for people to constantly say things like, in my opinion, in my opinion, in my opinion, with every single sentence. I'm not saying they should do that, but what I'm saying is, if you feel like Ghost is basically a copy of Assassin's Creed, just keep it to yourself, because that's just going to annoy people. And it's kind of intentionally combative, if you see what I mean. And then goes on to say how a lot of Assassin's Creed fans have always wanted the games to go to Japan, so he's not surprised that Ghost was as popular as it is, especially given how good the graphics are. And again, that's that compliment thing. It just sounds like he's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet, so to speak, about Ghost being lauded over other games, you know, and that's fine, but to come out and write this whole thing and then send it into a website like the Metro and get it published, I just don't know. And again, I'm not trying to be nasty to the person, but it sort of feels like that they have a bit of a grudge against Ghost because it's seen as better than Days Gone by a lot of people, you know. And I think he really wanted this opinion out there and was possibly seeking some sort of validation for it, maybe. I mean, look, I watch things like Power Rangers. I still watch it to this day, the originals and the newer stuff. I watch it because I enjoy it, and I couldn't give a shit who doesn't want me to watch it or thinks I'm too old for it, or oh, that's for kids or whatever. I just don't care. And in that same vein, I've never cared if friends of mine or random people on the internet don't like the same things I like. It's just not important to me, but I guess it maybe was important to the author of this piece. At least that's how it seems to me. But then they go on to say, quote, "Suffice to say, I'm not nostalgic about the old Assassin's Creed games at all, and even at the time I found them to be bloated, repetitive, and with painfully uninteresting characters and stories. This is something that Ghost of Tsushima copies exactly," which of course, again, is an opinion. And at this point I'll just pick out a few more little things and then I will actually get to the point of this video. So it's at this point that they kind of drop the act, so to speak, by saying things like, quote, "Everything else though is the most boring cookie cutter effort you could ever imagine. It's almost like they made a map and then programmed a few variables into a computer to design the rest of the game for them. Put a fox shrine there, a haiku spot there, a Mongol camp there. Rinse and repeat a dozen times and all you have to do is add a few unique missions and you've made a video game. It's the Mongol camps I hate most, as they're straight out of Assassin's Creed and rely on exactly the same sort of super basic stealth tactics. Basically crouch and stay in the grass, and that's it. I have no idea where the fascination with the Mongol invasion came from, as it all feels very artificial in the way it's presented, as if they went looking for an excuse to have Ubisoft-style encampments to liberate rather than coming up with gameplay ideas first and then working the story around them. Which, I have to be honest, sounds like utter nonsense to me, but I'll read one more thing and then I'll get on to the main point. Quote, "Everything in Ghost of Tsushima is so formulaic and repetitive, and I haven't even addressed the issue of why Sony, a Japanese company, is letting one of its American developers make a game all about Japan. I can't help but imagine that a Japanese version of the same basic idea wouldn't be nearly as unimaginative, and I'm certain it wouldn't be a clone of Assassin's Creed." Now, dear God, how to unpack that? That last part there is very weird to me. Why does it matter that it's an American company making a Japanese game? I don't really understand why that would matter. And saying it's unimaginative and it wouldn't be a clone is, again, all just his own view. So it sounds very much like this person has a grudge against Days Gone not getting a sequel and Ghost of Tsushima being seen as something really great when it's not something he's interested in. And now, we're not going to be using any more of the article, but to go on to the main point of this entire video, which is, again, not to tear this person down, I want everyone out there to try and understand, and this is something that I'm trying to bring back into the world, in all honesty, because it seems to have been lost to the ancients somehow. I'm not sure why, but I'm trying to bring back the fact that people disagreeing is completely normal. Like, it just happens all of the time in literally every corner of the planet. It's really not something to be angry about, I don't think, and it leads me into talking about reviews. So for argument's sake, let's imagine that IGN or GameSpot or whoever else has 20 or 30 employees that do reviews for them. There is not a single way in hell that that company can remain consistent in its reviews, unless it's being mandated from above that they have to give a certain game a certain review, which I don't really believe happens much, if at all. But think about it in relative terms. So let's say IGN, they've got 20 employees that all do reviews. Now, if one of them likes certain games better than others, and another person, they all have different backgrounds, views, viewpoints, whatever else. There is not a single way that that website as a whole can be consistent. Now, if you go to something like Angry Joe or even myself, again, shameless plug there, but if you if you go to people like me or him, Joe is a small team of 3 people, and it's mostly him that does the reviewing, mostly. So you're going to get a very consistent experience. You could almost guess what he might review a game when he plays it, just because you know his personality if you've been watching him for years like I have. So to that end, I would honestly say and recommend to all of you or anyone who's watching this to actively look for and seek out as many different opinions as reasonably possible. Look at your IGNs, look at your GameSpots and whatever, but also look at people like me with barely any viewership or subscribers, then look at people like Joe with millions of subscribers. You know, look at everything you can and try to figure out where you think you would fit in the spectrum of opinions. I think that's the best way to do it. It sounds really overly complex and probably to some of you sounds like absolutely common knowledge or common sense, but you wouldn't believe how many people these days are literally growing up not being able to accept that other people think differently. It happens all the time. I've even had people on my videos, and I'm not calling any names out, but I've had some people, you know, start off a conversation with me pretty aggressively, and then we've talked through it and it's ended really amicably, and that's great. I actually love that. It's brilliant when someone comes to me and they're like, oh, you're wrong and you're this, and I'm saying, well, no, look, let's talk about it. Let's see where we can agree and where we don't agree. And it can be something, I'll just use this as a last example, it can be something just as simple as Ghost of Tsushima. Let's just say the music. I personally thought that Ghost of Tsushima's music was beautiful. I thought it was stunning. I thought it was just absolute ear candy. I loved being in that world with that music, especially some of the music that played during the haiku sections. It was absolutely gorgeous. And that's just how I feel about it. Somebody else who's got absolutely no interest in that kind of music or Japan or any of the culture or any of it, they could listen to it and literally say, oh, that's a bit crap. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to explain to you. People just don't all like the same thing. I mean, go ahead and tell me a video game that every single person who's ever sat down and played it has loved unanimously. I bet you can't, because there isn't one. It just doesn't work that way. I'm sort of stumbling over myself to say these things, but people are forgetting about it. And I've told you guys before, I'm in my early 30s. I'm 33 years old, and I came from a time just before that we had the internet and all this kind of technology, right? So I remember what it was like to be a kid, to go outside, to meet people, to play outside, to form friendships face to face, and actually have to understand how people feel and gauge how they're feeling from their faces and their reactions to things that I was doing. That's how a lot of kids used to grow up. And I'm not trying to be, angry man shouts at cloud, but what I'm saying is a lot of kids are genuinely growing up stuck to phones and stuck to iPads and whatever else. And please don't think I'm being hypocritical by trying to say all this, because I play video games hours and hours and hours every day. So I'm not an advocate for saying kids shouldn't play games or any of that kind of stuff, or no kids should be inside, they should all be outside. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, because kids are growing up only doing that one thing and speaking to people through messages and on Twitter and things like that, as opposed to in real life face to face, they're not learning how to react to things. They're not learning the correct way, or the way to have manners, I suppose. They're not learning how to accept that people are different. And I think that's getting a bit dangerous, to be honest, because you get something where a review comes out, the game gets a 6 from a reviewer who didn't like it that much, right? And again, I don't give review scores, but a lot of people do, okay? So the game comes out, gets a 6, and you get the nastiest stuff in the comments from people that my brain instantly thinks like, how? Who woke up in the morning and decided to post that to somebody else? Don't they realize that another human is going to receive that and probably feel like shit for the rest of the day? And, again, some people will say, oh, does it really matter? I mean, I'm not going to change the world, but differing opinions are definitely going to be something that is an underlying theme in my videos and all of my content going forward. So hopefully that will sort of foster a really nice environment here on the channel, and we can all chat, we can all be respectful and find common ground even if we disagree. But anyway, I know I've been rambling on and on and on, so I'll let you guys go. Thanks for watching the video. I know some of my regular watchers will probably have some stuff to say about this, so please do comment down below. I'd love to hear it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do consider it today. I post gaming news, reviews, and videos like the one you're watching right now, 2 to 3 times a week. Please check out the online retro gaming store, Pyro Games. There will be a direct link to their store in the video description, along with a 10% discount code. But I think that's all there is to say. So, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.